it's Quick Take. I'm Susie. I'm here with my co-host, James. How are you, James?
I'm fantastic. How about yourself, Susie?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I have a busy week, and I thought we would talk about one of my clients that I'm working with.
Sure.
It's really interesting. The boss, it's a technology company,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of priorities in the business. And there's a lot of people that push the priorities down depending
Sure.
on what part of the business they're in. So this organization doesn't have a lot of control over those priorities. And
Right.
so the reaction that the management has is to get really tense and use emotion,
Mm.
sometimes anger and frustration to kind of motivate.
Right.
It's kind of hard to think that this is 2024,
Yeah.
but that's kind of what's happening is we don't have control, so we better just do what we're supposed to do and do the best we can do to get it done.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, how do you go about? I think about the situations, and I'm like, how do you go about getting that leader to think of things differently? I mean, what are some of the strategies you've used?
Yeah, I really talking about the research around the shift
Mm.
that has happened from,
Oh, that's a great idea.
old school boss to
Hmm.
moving to coach and how recognition and motivation really come from being able to give people agency to
Right.
move forward on their own. And so it's a hard shift to make sometimes
Yep.
because sometimes it is easier just to command and control
Oh, of course.
and move from that.
Sometimes I like to, you know, depending on your audience, this particular leader, I'd like to use analogies or examples of, what would this person do? How would you
Yeah.
look at it from this point of view? Because sometimes it's difficult to um,
Mm.
access, understand the research or have good role models. And so I like to look at maybe, three types of role models, perhaps, that person may understand better than a white paper, especially when you're working with different types of organizations. Every technology organization has a different type of um, ecosystem and people that it attracts. Technology is eating everything. So you have technology across the entire spectrum of companies. And so sometimes I like to sit down and go, let me give you three types of people, three types of leaders that deal with challenges, and let's think about how they do it. And maybe something we could talk about today, or like three people that deal with challenges and ways that they tackle them.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. I think the key is to get that person to shift out of their current
Right.
situation and be able to have some distance, which is a challenge to do, but I think that's a great way of looking at it because then they'll problem solve
Yep.
with that persona in mind.
Right. Right. And so the three I always like to use, and I know they're weird but they're intentionally different. I like to think of a firefighter, a farmer, and a fashion icon. So I'm big on alliteration. So there's big three F's right there. But those three types of leaders, I think, can show ways that others deal with challenges and maybe help other leaders think about what they could be doing differently.
That's super interesting. So you would kind of go through the day in the life of one of those three?
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. So, like an example would be, I always start with a farmer. When a farmer deals with challenges, I always say, look, a farmer would just roll up his sleeves and get it done, right? And
Yeah.
there's lots of examples of that. I was coaching with a CEO of a company who was facing a product recall, and what she did is she actually went out and visited all the communities that were affected by this recall. And by community, I meant the pockets of the of her of the country that were buying her product, so she could understand who was being impacted by this recall. And that rolling up her sleeves, getting involved, changed the attitude of the recall. I think you've also seen, Yvon Chouinard, the Patagonia founder. They had some
Yeah.
same problems, and he went out there and got his or her arms, sleeves rolled up, and really got involved in some of the loyalty issues they had. And I think when you get involved, and you as a leader get in the trenches with the challenge problems, I think you're a lot better off. So,
Yeah.
first thing I always like to talk to people is, what would a farmer do? A farmer would just roll up his sleeves and get involved.
I love it. I love it. That's a good one. And it's so great to be able to visualize that because
Yep.
it
Yep.
really, but you have to think about how that applies to you as well once you
Hmm.
can see that. Yeah, I like that analogy because it really helps you visualize that you need to stop thinking about it from your perspective and how can you kind of get in with your other person, like get in the field.
Right. Yeah. Literally and figuratively. Right. Because I think it means so much when you are involved at the levels that are uh, much more impactful. And sometimes as a leader, it's just really great to get your hands dirty.
Yeah, and I also like that too because it shifts your thinking so that we always see things from our
Hmm.
perspective, but if you can also when you're making that shift really see it from a different alignment, that can be really helpful to understand what they're going
Yeah, I
through.
think it goes a long way, and
Yeah.
it goes to building rapport, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
What's the
second
second
one is a
F?
fireman, and I think one of the things that we need to think about a lot is how we respond under stress. And I think the
Yeah.
fireman is somebody that we consistently see under a ridiculous amount of stress and situations that are extremely fluid. I mean, I can't imagine running into a burning house, but remaining calm is, I think, the
Yeah.
key takeaway from the fireman, where you've got to look at the challenges that are in front of you, but knowing that that you've got to remain calm and be a role model for your team. I've talked to a handful of executives, CTOs in particular, who have had massive technology outages. Servers are down. Google Cloud
Yeah.
has gone down, etc. And remaining calm in those situations helps
Yeah.
people realize that they have a role to play here. It helps you delegate tasks more effectively. It helps you communicate more calmly, and ultimately, I think the employees and the customers see the behavior and understand that you've got things under control.
Yeah, I think that the key there is the calm because you
Hmm.
don't want to take
Hmm.
on the emotion. I have a friend who's a fire chief, and he said that you have to almost, while you're driving, just suspend reality
Yeah,
because you don't know what you're going to come to a scene of a car where, there was a crash. And
sure.
he said often it's very hard to see some of those things, but he doesn't deal with that until they're driving away.
Right, right.
In the moment, he has to figure out how can I help?
Yeah, and I've had outages on my companies, and the more, frankly, the crazy conversations are after everything's all said and done, and you're sitting around the bar going,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, that was insane! How did we even survive
Yeah.
that?" And then as a leader, you can kind of let your hair down, but in the moment, you're right. You've got to kind of suspend that anxiety and put it aside, and you're going to find yourself in a better place if you do.
Yeah, I love that. I can see the 2 make a lot of sense,
Hmm.
but I can't wait for the 3rd one because
My
I'm
fashion
not sure how
icon.
you're gonna use this one.
When I think of fashion, I think of the crazy way things change, and
Oh,
the ever fluid insanity of fashion. And so when I think of how challenging it must be to think this is popular today and this is popular tomorrow, that you have to be able to be responsive, and you have to be
yeah.
agile, and you have to be willing to deviate from your original plan. And so I think of there are many industries and many roles, but as somebody who is looking at fashion and trying to drive the way that those particular things are looked at, you have to be able to adapt and adjust. And so, whether it's launching viral campaigns, looking at PR situations, you have to be able to pivot. And so, like a fashion icon, I think it's key that you are flexible and willing to adjust.
It's a good one. Now I get it, and I also think that sometimes the fashion, the trend, you may need to wear it, and it may not be your favorite, most
Hmm.
comfortable or your style,
Sure.
style that you love, but you have to be able to move into it and kind of play the part, if you will.
Exactly right. Great way to pull that in. And I think that the goal is, Sometimes you have to make decisions you don't like. Sometimes the answer isn't the best one. Sometimes you don't have all the information as a leader. And so you have to do the best you can. And so that kind of flexibility is really what I'm trying to highlight with that role. Because you can't always know everything. And sometimes you just have to go with what you got.
Yeah, I love this because as you're going into it, if people could visualize, which am I going to be?
Right, right.
The farmer, the firefighter, or the fashion.
Fashion
So
icon,
tell
right?
us,
So yeah, let's wrap
yeah,
that up.
bring
So
it back.
look, that what I'm really trying to say here is that sometimes as leaders or as coaches, we have to speak to leaders so they understand ways that they can behave differently. And sometimes talking about the research or particular examples just don't resonate. And so I like to use different types of personas to help get the story across. And so I like to talk about a farmer who likes to get his hands dirty. I like to talk about a fireman who has to remain calm in the moments of diversity, and I like to talk about a fashion icon who is has to be agile and change to the way things happen in real time.
Love it. Love it. This is such a good one. Boy, you're being very creative, James. Very, very well done.